Please stand for the Gospel reading. Hear the Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. From there Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know that he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. But he said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that you may go, and the demon has left your daughter." So she went home and found the child lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. Then Jesus returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears and spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," which is, "be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one. But the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. For they were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The scripture readings this morning have that theme of being made whole, of wholeness, of healing. Now, after all, we all want to be made whole, don't we? We all want to be healed. We all want to be fully whole, integrated human beings. That's why Jesus came, to make us whole. That's so much of what salvation is being made whole, being made one with God, and being made one with each other, and being made one, integrated whole with our very selves. In the gospel story, Jesus heals or casts out a demon from the daughter of the Syrophoenician woman, and then heals the deaf man so he can speak and so he can hear. In our Old Testament reading from Isaiah, we see that hope of restoration, of the people returning to Zion, and of healing, not just of the individual, but of the nation, that all shall be made well. Now, we live in a fallen world. We live in a world which needs so much more healing, so much more wholeness amongst us. And that's why James gives his practical advice on caring for each other. Don't just say, "God bless you," and then goodbye. But if someone needs food, if someone needs shelter, if someone needs any of those practical things of life, then we're called upon by God to share those, and not just share our words. Not just thoughts and prayers, but action as well. But the Christian gospel, the Christian belief, the Christian religion has hope for more. It has hope for the future. It has hope for that things will get better, not just in this world, but in the world to come. And while, as I preached last week, we are called to live in the here and now, and not just think of the future, that will be the time when things will be okay, that we have to live now and be in God's presence now. Still, as we look at the world and the many wrong things in the world, we can have a hope for a better future. for a better tomorrow. We're called to act now to make this world a better place. And as we read in our New Testament reading, we're not called to act with favoritism. It's so easy. If somebody comes into the church who is very wealthy, how easy is it for us to say, well, it's very nice to see you, welcome, we're really glad that you're here, please sit down, and then talk to them afterwards and make sure they feel welcome. Whereas maybe somebody who looks, I don't know, it's different in every culture. But there are always people that we will make more welcome than others. But we have to make all welcome. In their culture it was very much what people looked like, how rich or poor they actually looked. In our culture it may be other things which make us think one person is much more important than the others. I was reading an article yesterday on the internet about the evangelical churches in many parts of the world where single young women often feel very undervalued because there are just loads of them. It's like, oh, another young woman, another woman. And they feel that the families are the important people. And if it's just another single person, then, well, yeah, we have lots of single people. Now, we don't have that, perhaps, idea, but maybe we have hidden ideas of who we feel are more important than others. And what about Jesus? What about how Jesus acted when this woman came into his room or came into the house where he was staying? Now we can see what Jesus was, the position he was in, for he was trying to get away from the crowd, as so often we read. They were following him everywhere and he never had time to rest. So finally he'd gone to a place where really there were no Jewish people, probably he should be fairly unknown, and he'd gone into presumably a friend's house, closed the door, and thought, right, now I can have something to eat and a rest, and maybe do nothing for a couple of days and just recover. But immediately, there's a knock on the door, someone's found him, the woman comes in, and she's wanting something more. She's needing healing for her daughter. Not that there's anything wrong with that, for as I said at the beginning, wholeness is something we all crave, and this was not for herself, but for her daughter. And yet Jesus' reaction was very strange. It's perhaps one of the strangest parts of the Gospels. Because Jesus, instead of healing this woman and showing his love immediately, he seems to reject her. He starts talking about dogs and says, well, it's not good for the children's food to be given to the dogs. Now, for 2,000 years, people have puzzled over what did that actually mean. What was Jesus saying? Was he really seemingly prejudiced against this woman? Or was he just testing her faith to see how much faith she had? Or what was it? And perhaps we can't really give a clear answer to that. But we do see the woman's response. She's humble enough not to say, well, if that's your attitude, I'm going, goodbye. But instead she says, even the dogs can gather the crumbs from under their master's table. And he sees the faith that she has, and he heals the daughter. Now, we don't really know what was going on there exactly. Maybe it was a common phrase. Maybe it was almost like a password that someone would say, well, you can't give the children's food to the dogs, and the automatic response that everyone would give was, well, even the dogs can eat the food under the master's table. Maybe it was a common sort of proverb that was just being given back and forth. We don't know. But what we do know is that when the woman came to Jesus in faith, he was able to heal her daughter. But what about us? Where would we have been in that situation? Would we have been so full of pride we'd have said, well, if that's the way you're going to talk to me, I'm off, goodbye? Or would we have given the answer in faith? I guess she was so desperate and had the faith that he could do that she was prepared to say, no, maybe I'm not that good a person, maybe I'm not that high-standing a person, but still, please do this for my daughter. We all want wholeness. We all want to be fully healed and integrated people. That's many parts of what salvation is about what it means to be saved. It isn't about, well, I'm going to get to heaven and not go to hell. It's about, I'm going to be at peace with God, at peace with my brothers and sisters, at peace with myself. And for so many people, that's the biggest area of salvation they need, is just peace with themselves internally. Because they struggle with so many demons, not literal demons, but things which maybe from the past, things which have happened, which need healing, which need wholeness, which need reconciliation. But what do we mean by healing? And who needs healing? That's maybe a more difficult question than it would seem. You know Jean, of course, who has worked many, many years with the deaf community and is now the chaplain for the whole of the deaf community in the New York diocese. Many deaf people now would say they don't want healing. If they could be offered healing and suddenly could be made to hear, they don't want that because their identity is that's who they are, and they're part of that community. They believe that's who God created them to be, and God has given them many blessings and many good things, and being deafness is just part of who they are. What about if someone has Down syndrome? Should they be healed from that, or is that who God created them to be? Sometimes those questions of wholeness can be more difficult. And of course we've heard all these controversies around gender and so on, and sexuality. Who needs healing and who doesn't need healing? I think in the end we come before God, each one of us, as who we are. And we ask God to make us, to heal us, to make us whole, but to make us who He created us to be. The very person that God wants us to be. But what does it mean to be whole? Well, I think at the very heart of it, it does not mean to be selfish. It means to be reaching out to others. When we're really whole and integrated people, we're not thinking of ourselves all the time, but we can be thinking of others. If we look at that list of what love is like from 1 Corinthians, love is kind, love is patient, love is kind. It is not envious. It is not boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable. It is not resentful. It does not rejoice in wrong, but rather rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And so it is as we are made and become whole people. That's what we should be like, people full of love and people thinking of those around us. To be truly whole is to be like Jesus, in the way He lived His life and the way He was prepared even to die for those He loved. And He loved everyone. But it's so easy to fall into selfishness, to fall into self-centeredness. So often when we're thinking about anything, we think, well, will this thing make me happy? Will this fulfill my wants? Will this fulfill my needs? Will this give me what I need, what I want? And those are not bad questions. But they just will destroy us if that's all the question we have. For if we're not asking what will make others happy, what do others need, what do others want, then we just decay into self-centeredness and selfishness, and in the end we are alone. To be whole is to live for others, to reach out and to be kind. It's like a small spark. If you can be kind to one person, even if you don't feel like it, but if you can be kind to one person, and that can be like a spark in a dry forest, where that kindness can spread into a mighty fire of love and change of the world. We're called to see God, to seek wholeness, yes, but not for our own selves, but so that we can share God's love, God's wholeness, God's healing with the world. So let us try as much as we can to love all we meet, to see each person as God sees them. As James wrote, don't just look at the outward clothes and think this is a rich person that we should honor and this is a poor person that's not important. For each one is our brother and sister. Let's take the love of God and share the message of the wholeness that God offers. And let's take that to the whole world. Amen.